Listen, I need to tell you about something that just dropped, and honestly, it has me more hyped than I've been in weeks. Because if this actually plays out the way one league insider is suggesting, the Dallas Cowboys could be walking away from this draft with an absolute game-changing defender. And before we dive into all of this, I need you to do me a quick favor. Hit that subscribe button right now, because this channel gives you Cowboys news the moment it breaks, and way too many of you are watching without subscribing. So if you rock with the star, join the family, and let's get into this. Because what I'm about to break down could change everything. We thought we knew about pick number 12. So here's the situation. Daniel Jeremiah, who is one of the most respected draft analysts in the entire industry, just went on record saying that Caleb Downs falling to the Dallas Cowboys at pick 12 is not some pipe dream fantasy. It's actually legit. Those were his words, legit. And when a guy like Jeremiah, who has connections throughout the league and has been doing this for years, tells you something is possible, you need to pay attention, because this isn't just some random hot take from somebody looking for clicks. This is a guy who talks to scouts, general managers, and coaches on a daily basis. And he's telling Cowboys fans right now, do not give up hope on Caleb Downs being available when Dallas is on the clock. And the crazy part is, he actually broke down exactly why this could happen. And it makes way more sense than you might think. So let me walk you through this, because I know a lot of you are probably thinking, there's no way the best safety in this class falls that far. But here's what nobody is talking about. Safeties have a history of dropping in the NFL draft. And I mean a real documented pattern that repeats itself over and over again. Think about some of the best safeties we've seen come into this league in recent years. Kyle Hamilton, who I personally thought was the personally best player in his entire draft class, fell all the way to pick 14. And teams overthought that one so badly because they got scared of a 40-yard dash time. Brian Branch, who has turned into an absolute monster for the Detroit Lions, went at pick 45. That's the second round for a guy who probably should have been a top 15 selection. Derwin James, one of the most versatile safeties we've seen in the modern era, fell to pick 17, and even Malachi Starks last year went at 25, which is later than most people expected for a player of his caliber. So when Jeremiah says weird stuff happens at the safety position, he's not making things up. He's pointing to actual evidence that this position gets pushed down the board more than it should, and that could absolutely work in Dallas's favor. Now let me explain the specific reasons why Downs might slip, because Jeremiah laid it all out, and some of it is fair criticism, and some of it is teams just being dumb, which we know happens every single year. So first off, Downs is not a big safety. He's under 6 feet tall, he weighs around 206 pounds, and his arms measure just barely over 30 inches. Now in a perfect world, none of that would matter, because when you watch this kid play football, he looks like the best player on the field every single snap. But we know how NFL teams operate. They get obsessed with measurables. They fall in love with prototype body types, and they talk themselves out of guys who don't fit the mold, even when those guys are clearly dominant players. And that's exactly what might happen here, because according to multiple reports, there are teams in this draft that have Malachi Starks rated higher than Downs, and there are teams that have Xavier Fenneman rated higher too. Now, I personally think that's insane, because Downs has been a 3-year starter at the highest level of college football, playing for some of the best programs in the country, and every single time I watched him, he looked like the most instinctive player out there. But that's the reality of how some front offices are viewing this class. And if enough teams feel that way, it creates a path for Downs to slide right into the Cowboys' lap at 12. The other factor working in Dallas's favor is that Downs doesn't have a ton of what evaluators call splash plays. And this is where I think teams are really missing the point, because when you compare him to someone who's more of a ball-hawking free safety, yeah, the interception numbers and the big hit highlights might not be as flashy, but that's not who Caleb Downs is, and that's not how you should be evaluating him. This is a player who lives near the box, who sniffs out runs before they even develop, who can cover tight ends and slot receivers, and who brings an energy and communication to the back end of a defense that elevates everyone around him. Jeremiah actually made a really interesting point about this. He said when you talk to people at both schools Downs attended, they'll tell you the sum is greater than the individual parts. Because of the impact he has on everyone else in that defense, the communication, the leadership, the way he makes his teammates better. And Jeremiah added something that I absolutely love. He said, the closer you are to the middle of the field, the more leadership matters. And that is such an underrated aspect of building a defense, because you can have all the talented corners and pass rushers you want. But if you don't have somebody in the middle of that field, quarterbacking everything and making sure everyone is lined up correctly, you're going to have breakdowns. And Caleb Downs is that guy. Now here's where this gets really exciting for Cowboys fans, specifically, because when Christian Parker got hired as the new defensive coordinator, he was asked what he looks for in a nickel defensive back, and his answer was basically a perfect description of Caleb Downs without even mentioning his name. Parker said he wants a guy who can be a corner, sometimes a safety, sometimes a linebacker sometimes, and even a defensive end when he's blitzing. He said you want someone with natural instincts and the ability to feel the game and play football. And then he dropped this line that stuck with me. He said, he's the guy that if you were playing football on a Saturday afternoon in the neighborhood, he's your first-round pick, because he just feels the game naturally. And when I heard that, I immediately thought of Downs, because that's exactly what you're getting with this player. He's not going to wow you with 40-yard dash times or vertical leap numbers, but put him on a football field, and he's going to make plays that nobody else sees coming because his football IQ is off the charts. So the fit is absolutely perfect for what Dallas is trying to build under this new defensive staff. And if Downs falls to 12, it would be like the football gods decided to gift wrap exactly what this team needs and drop it right in their laps. Now, I do need to mention something because there was a report a few weeks back about a potential knee concern with Downs. And I want to be clear about what we actually know versus what's speculation, because this is where things can get murky. One report indicated that a team had flagged something during the medical evaluation process, but it wasn't described as a major issue. And since that initial report, things have been pretty quiet on that front. So it could have been one team being overly cautious, or it could have been nothing at all. We just don't have enough information to say definitively either way. But it is something to keep in mind, because if other teams are spooked by that medical flag even a little bit, it adds another reason why Downs could potentially slide and look. I've seen teams overthink themselves right out of elite players for far dumber reasons than a minor medical flag, so this could absolutely factor into the equation when you're trying to figure out whether the Cowboys have a shot here. The question I keep asking myself is, what's the actual percentage chance that this happens? And honestly, I don't think it's zero. I really don't. Now, is it the most likely outcome? Probably not. If I had to put a number on it, I'd say maybe somewhere around 10 to 15%, but that's not nothing. Especially when you consider that we've seen crazier things happen in the draft before, and I keep coming back to CeeDee Lamb as the perfect example. Because when that draft was happening, I thought there was zero chance Lamb would fall to the Cowboys at 17. I remember watching and thinking, okay, Dallas is going to have to settle for somebody else, because there's no way he gets past all these teams and then pick after. Pick went by, and suddenly there he was still on the board, and the Cowboys grabbed him, and it completely changed the trajectory of their offense. So we know it can happen, we've lived through it as fans, and if there's even a small chance that Caleb Downs follows that same path, you have to be excited about the possibility. Now let me talk about why this matters so much for the Cowboys specifically, because I know some people are going to say it's just a safety. Why are you so hyped about a safety? And to that, I would say you're not watching this defense closely enough, because the safety position has been a revolving door for Dallas for way too long, and they haven't had a true impact player at that spot in years. Think about what this defense could look like with a player like Downs back there. You've got Micah Parsons rushing the passer. You've got DeMarvion Overshone and Eric Kendricks at linebacker. You've got Trevin Diggs at corner when healthy. And now imagine adding a safety who can cover tight ends, take away the middle of the field, support the run like a linebacker, and communicate the entire coverage to everyone on the field. That changes everything. And the beautiful part about Downs is his versatility, because he can play traditional safety. He can slide down into that nickel role that Christian Parker was describing. He can even function as an extra linebacker in certain packages. So you're not just drafting one position, you're drafting a chess piece that can be moved all over the board depending on the matchup. And in today's NFL, where offenses are more complex and diverse than ever, having that kind of flexibility in your secondary is absolutely invaluable. The comparisons I keep hearing for Downs are guys like Brian Branch, Budda Baker, and Malcolm Jenkins. And honestly, those all feel pretty accurate to me because he's that safety/nickel hybrid who might not have elite size or elite speed, but makes up for it with instincts, processing, and an ability to be in the right place at the right time every single snap. And when you look at what those players have meant to their respective defenses over the years, that's the kind of impact the Cowboys could be adding. If Downs falls to them at 12 now, I want to address something that Jeremiah said, because I think it's important. When he compared Downs to guys like Derwin James and Kyle Hamilton, he noted that when you put Downs on stage next to those physical specimens, he's not going to look the same. He doesn't have that elite size and athleticism combination that makes scouts drool. But here's the thing, those comparisons aren't entirely fair, because Derwin and Hamilton were viewed as generational type athletes at the position, and Downs is just a different player. He wins in different ways, and teams need to understand that evaluating him by those standards is going to lead you to the wrong conclusion, because Downs isn't trying to be Derwin James. He's trying to be the best version of Caleb Downs. And when you evaluate him on those terms, he's absolutely a top 10 caliber player who just happens to play a position that teams historically undervalue. So let me ask you this, Cowboys fans, are you buying the potential Caleb Downs slide? Do you think there's a real chance he falls to 12? Or do you think this is just draft season hype that's going to leave us disappointed when somebody else grabs him before Dallas even gets a chance to make the pick? Because I genuinely want to know what you're thinking. Drop your take in the comments right now and let's have a conversation about it. Because this is the kind of decision that could define this team's defense for the next decade, and it's worth discussing from every angle. The thing that gives me the most hope, honestly, is just the track record of safeties falling, combined with the specific concerns teams might have about Downs. Because like I said, he's undersized, his arms are short, he doesn't have a ton of highlight reel interceptions, and there's at least some medical flag out there that could give teams pause. And when you add all of that up, and then factor in that this draft class doesn't have the same top-heavy elite talent that some previous classes have had, it creates a scenario where weird things could happen in the top 10 that push Downs right to where Dallas is picking. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's definitely going to happen, because I don't have a crystal ball and neither does anyone else. But I will say that when someone like Daniel Jeremiah goes on record saying this is legit, you have to take it seriously, because he doesn't throw that word around lightly, and he knows more about how teams are actually evaluating these players than almost anyone in media. So if he's telling us there's a path for Downs to get to Dallas at 12, I'm choosing to believe there's at least a chance. And sometimes that's all you can ask for as a fan. Just the chance that everything breaks, right? And your team walks away with exactly the player they needed most. The other thing I keep thinking about is what it would mean for the locker room, because bringing in a player with Downs' leadership, qualities, and competitive fire would send a message to everyone on that roster that the Cowboys are serious about building an elite defense. And when you combine that with what Jerry Jones has been saying all offseason about wanting to get back to contending and making smart decisions in the draft, this feels like exactly the kind of move that would align with those stated goals, because you're not just getting a talented player, you're getting a culture setter, someone who's going to demand excellence from himself and everyone around him, and that's the kind of addition that can have ripple effects throughout an entire organization. Now let me wrap this up by giving you my honest take on the whole situation, because I've been going back and forth on this for weeks, and I think I've finally landed somewhere that makes sense to me. I don't think Caleb Downs falling to 12 is the most likely outcome. I think there's a better chance he goes somewhere in the 6 to 10 range and Dallas has to pivot to another option. But I also don't think it's impossible or even unrealistic, because we've seen this exact scenario play out before with other safeties, and we've seen the Cowboys benefit from other players falling unexpectedly. So if you're asking me whether I'm holding on to hope, the answer is absolutely yes, because in my opinion, Downs would be the perfect pick for this team at this spot in this draft. And if there's even a 10% chance it happens, that's worth getting excited about. And listen, if you made it this far in the video, I really appreciate you taking the time to rock with us on Blue and Silver Nation. This is the kind of deep dive analysis we do every single day. So if you're not subscribed yet, make sure you hit that button, because you don't want to miss our live draft coverage when we find out in real time whether Caleb Downs is going to be wearing the star or not. And I want to hear from you in the comments right now. Do you think Downs falls to 12? And is he the guy you want the Cowboys to take? Or is there another player you'd rather see them grab at that spot? Let me know, because this community is all about the conversation and your voice matters. So drop that comment, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll catch you on the next one. Let's go, Cowboys.